Meet Alexei, a champion-level Pokemon trainer from Sinnoh. He's travelled to Kanto with Jericho, his trusty Electivire, after hearing of the radical improvements that every trainer in this region has made. Desperate for a new challenge and a real test of his skills, he has decided to run this new Kanto Gauntlet. But after roaming the region to get his bearings, he noticed something disturbing. Something so heinous that he cannot let the injustice go unpunished. Many Pokemon have been ignored, discounted, or discarded simply because they aren't best of the best. The trainers in this region have now become elitist snobs, and Alexei has vowed to put them in their place and use an army of these misfit warriors to do it. Welcome everybody to the Pokémon Radical Red Trash Lock. Alexei begins his journey by scouring the routes on the way to Pewter City and the first gym, hoping to gather recruits. Group 1, and the tone setter for this challenge, a Cosmog. An absolutely phenomenal late game encounter. However, it does absolutely nothing until its final evolution at level 64. Let's hope the next few encounters can produce some soldiers ready to fight now, not in 15 years. Luckily, Route 21 and Viridian City grant our fearless leader a Wooper and Foongus respectively. These will surely be key to the region's first gym leader, Brock. Outside of being challenged by some kid named Brendan, and a battle versus the stalliest, most annoying, demonic Ordino, the walk to Pewter City was pretty uneventful. And prior to challenging the gym, Viridian Forest, Pewter City, and Diglett Cave reward Alexei with 3 bugs. Yes, they can immediately evolve, but 2 of these are 4 times weak to Brock's rock types. Beedrill, Butterfree, and Frostmoth will situationally be pretty useful. Butterfree, for example, can be a decent pivot versus Brock, thanks to its secondary flying typing and access to Mega Drain. Before challenging Brock, however, Alexei discovers that the Johto gym leaders have had exactly the same idea as him, and he's challenged by Faulkner while visiting the Pewter City Museum. Faulkner is brushed aside pretty easily though, thanks to a fully evolved Bug Ice type with access to Icy Wind and Struggle Bug. See, Doji's Frostmoth was situationally useful. With a boost of confidence for the whole team, Alexei strolls into the Pewter City gym and challenges Brock. Jericho is up first, but Brock's Geodude just blows up in his face. I guess seeing the Ayatollah of Rock and Roller was just a little too much for it. Brock sends out Onix, so Jericho tags in Rosa, who survives 2 Rock Tombs to bring the Stone Snake the Sturdy with a single Mega Drain. Onix runs scared, sending in Varoom, who loses his air balloon to another Mega Drain. Rosa tags in Snooker, who tanks a Gyro Ball on the switch. Superfly has the ability Stage Power, which is essentially a built-in choice specs, so a critical hit Psybeam eliminates the second member of Team Brock. This brings in Archon, who for some reason hits Santino with the pluck on the switch. This makes things a little tricky. Santino now needs to tank multiple plucks to pin Archon, which just isn't possible. So he gets off one water gun before tagging Jericho back in, who then outspeeds and completely destroys it with a Thundershock. The last member standing is that scaredy Onyx, who already outspeeds but goes for Rock Tombs. Obviously not realizing that Razor Leaf is guaranteed to put the Onyx down, Alexei drops his attack with a Play Knife before taking the KO. That's the first gym badge, and surprisingly, 2 gym leaders taken down, giving this merry band of misfits a phenomenal start to their journey. The trek to Cerulean City and Gym 2, headed up by Misty, is a long one, taking in Route 3, Route 4, and Mamoon. But other than being rudely interrupted by someone named Archer on the way out of the cave, it's fairly uneventful. In Cerulean City, Alexei has a big decision to make. Immediately take on Misty, or run the Nugget Bridge Gauntlet for access to 2 more encounters. The bridge battles aren't exactly the toughest, but one lapse in concentration could still very easily cost you a mon. Before setting foot on the bridge though, another local trainer named Gary decides to challenge Team Comeback, but despite his love of switching, he's quickly taken down by the now deceased Santino. Rest in peace, Cobra. You will be missed. Especially with the electric gym up third. Aside from Santino's unnecessary demise, and some grunt attempting to recruit Alexei into something called Team Rocket, the trip across the river isn't eventful, and the stable gains a bunch of new members, including a Porygon Z with Lightning Rod. Misty is going to be a challenge, since the majority of her Pokemon know ice moves to deal with opposing grass types. Is what I would say if her team didn't get completely blown up by Jericho, Jake the Snake, and Thunder Rosa, with a small assist from Martina the Frostmoth. After Thekla, the now intimidating Spidops claims another 2 victims on the way out of the dig house. Alexei makes a beeline for the famous battling ship, the SS Anne. Conveniently, docked in Vermilion City, home of Lieutenant Surge and the 3rd Gym. Dustin, Regal, Marty, Jeff, and Coco, who could have been a frickin' Lunala if not for Species Clause, and Tajiri join the squad. Alexei boards the boat to prepare for the 3rd Gym. First test is against the pledge-loving father-daughter duo of Lass Ann and Gentleman Brooks. If they manage to set up the swamp with the lead Oshawott and Dartrix, your entire team has its speed reduced to 25% by the mud. Luckily, Martina can outspeed the Dartrix and take it out with a single Aurora Beam. The incoming Simisage means there's going to be a second attempt, but since Jericho is faster, he can just finish off the Oshawott, preventing it, before Simisage then gets put down with a single target Icy Wind. The duo's hardest hitting members are up next in a Life Orb wielding Wigglytuff and a Speed Demon Simisear with charcoal boosted Fire Blast. Lyra takes a critical hit Fire Blast on the switch, so cannot stay in. but Jake just deals with both using poison jabs as Hawk roosts off the damage he takes from the Fire Monkey. Test 1 passed with flying colours. Test 2 could be difficult, but thanks to the ability capsules handed over by the Dig Grunt, Jericho now has access to neutralizing gas, shutting off all abilities on the field, removing the Lilip Storm Drain, and essentially trivializing the fight. On the way to collect his reward from the captain, Brendan shows up again and challenges Alexei. Remember him? The weird kid from Viridian Forest? Well, he actually has a decent team now. It's still nothing the Devil's Rejects can't handle though, as Theppa takes yet another soul. So, Alexei gives the captain a back rub and keeps this train rolling along. Lieutenant Surge is where this becomes way more of a challenge, made even harder for Alexei by him not having a ground type. Things are slightly easier thanks to Jericho's neutralizing gas, which prevents the terrain being set up. So, Surge's Pokemon at least won't have that boost. Y2J then takes out Pinchurchin before Ziggler comes in ready for a nasty plot sweep. Unfortunately, Alexei forgot to account for Iron Fist, Focus Sash, Pawmod, ending the sweep before it even starts. Lyra takes over, pins the boxing bear, letting Ziggler return and get KO number 2 on Surge's ace Manectric. With the third gym badge and the HM for cut in hand, Alexei can make the incredibly long journey to Saffron City. This will give the entire squad access to their hidden abilities, a massive power boost. The trip though is fraught with danger, starting on Route 9 with picnicker Caitlin, an unassuming young trainer with a strategy Satan himself would be proud of. She leads with a choice scarfed Smeagol, who knows Decreate, Dragon Ascent, Close Combat, and Trick. The Smeagol itself isn't really a threat. Its stats are pitiful, nor is the Sneasel that switches in right after and gets handled by Lyra with a single Lumina Crash. A fate shared by the Smeagol when it returns. The general of this army from the underworld, though, finally takes the stage. A Spinder, who Alexei completely forgets has Contrary. Contrary makes it so that all moves that would cause stat drops instead cause stat raises, making this thing get tankier and deal more and more damage as the battle goes on. So, even though Lyra does half with a Lumina Crash, Spinder's special defense doubles thanks to the move's secondary effect. Tajiri, Master of the Mist, makes his debut, armed with the perfect combination of physical bulk and the move Haze, which removes all of Spinder's stat buffs. Unfortunately, a single Sludge Bomb isn't enough to finish the job, nor is an Air Slash from Hawk, who immediately gets crit and goes down. Dustin takes over and eats another critical hit, but finishes Satan off with a Brick Break. Alexei has yet another lapse in concentration, forgetting that assist is a status move, meaning that Lipard's prankster ability lets it go first, ripping a massive close combat that would have killed with a crit, before Dustin full switches out into Regal, the now fully evolved Empoleon, who then obviously can't go first with the priority Aqua Jet since Lipard is faster and has priority on assist. The battle is eventually won, but losing Hawk and almost losing Dustin will hopefully be a wake-up slap to the GM, and he'll take things a little steadier from here on out. The rest of the trip to Saffron is thankfully uneventful. There are 5 encounters, most of which will become useful later, especially the Route 7 Curlier that Alexei decides to tactically save to fulfill a potential hole in the roster. Armed with the power spike that hidden abilities have given him, Alexei fights his way through the Celadon trainers to face down Erica and her Pokemon-eating plants. Once again, Jericho prevents the terrain being set up, and with a held Sugar Berry plus Fire Punch, takes out Rillaboom. This brings out Hisuian Electrode, who, with Chloroblast, Explosion, and a held Life Orb, is a huge threat to Alexei's team. A pivot to Jachiri should have baited out a Thunderbolt, allowing a safe switch to Ziggler, but Dolph instead gets hit with a massive Chloroblast that thankfully doesn't crit, but doesn't even take out Electrode after the Life Orb chip. Our hero is in trouble. None of the team can afford to take a Chloroblast, and only one is immune to Explosion. This is dicey, but there is only one play to make, so Lady Frost jumps the ropes for her debut. Thankfully, Erica goes for Hidden Power Ice, which of course does very little damage, and causes the Ball of Hatred to fall to the Life Orb chip. Out comes Meowscarada, who for most trainers is an absolute nightmare to deal with. But Alexei has the big show. A once cute, smiling Citoddle who has grown into an ice-cold powerhouse with the multi-scale ability. Knockoff on tagging breaks the multi-scale and removes his Nevermount Ags, meaning the subsequent Ice Spinner doesn't KO, but a priority Ice Shard finishes the job. 3 down, 2 to go. Venusaur is next up. When he Mega Evolves, he gains the ability Thick Fat, meaning Big Show will always lose this fight. Hoping for a Sleep Powder, Alexei sends in Lady, whose held safety goggles make her immune. Venusaur, though, smells blood and rips a Sludge Bomb which poisons our debutante. This was a very poor choice as a result of very poor planning. And now, Lady will unfortunately pay the price. Nothing on Alexei's team can take 2 hits from the Megatoad, so the only hope of making it through this fight is for Lady's first appearance to be her last. She gets off a good chunk of damage, which, unfortunately, Venusaur mostly heals off with a Giga Drain and ends Lady's run before it even began. Lyra takes over and with a Lumina Crash into Psychic, finishes off Venu. And a Lumina Crash followed by an Air Slash is enough to deal with Meganium, earning Alexei the 4th gym badge. But is the challenge starting to get to him? Or are these lapses in concentration simply inexperience showing through? He needs to start learning fast, or this ride is going to come to a screeching halt. With badge number 4 in hand, Alexei decides to do a little shopping at the game corner. But that weird Team Rocket is causing chaos. He decides to investigate. Interrogating the grunt in the game room leads to a battle that is thankfully over in a few turns, with Thekla obliterating 3 out of the 4 Pokemon. It turns out that the not-so-evil team has its HQ in the basement. Battling his way down, Alexei finally reaches a guarded room. Looks like he has to throw down. With some safe protection switching, Grunt 1 really isn't a problem. Grunt 2, however, leads with wheezing plus slacking. A devastating combination. But Lyra takes care of wheezing with a single Lumina crash. Alexei makes another small mistake though, sending out Electivire to resuppress that Truant, but quickly realizes the mistake, goes back to safety, and another Grunt falls. Behind that locked door is the boss of Team Rocket, Giovanni. And he's just chilling there with a Kangaskhan. I guess we're battling the big man then. Gio leads Nidoking, and Lyra takes it out with a single Lumina crash. For some reason, Veluza comes out next. This is absolutely going to be a fillet away. So Lyra sticks around to get off a feather dance, so he cut his HP in half just to double his speed. Punk the Morlul makes his big entrance, eating an Aqua Cutter. Alexei makes a bold play here. Expecting the switch, he sends a Spore. It pays off, catching the Orthworm coming in. Rosa, the now fully evolved Sunflora, takes the Sleepy Worm out with a single Flamethrower, and in comes Kangaskhan. This thing is going to Mega, but it almost always goes for Fake Out first. Faster or not. So it's a safe switch to another debutante in Boogeyman. Crunch is scary, but a Hellcolber Berry reduces its power, and the Gooey ability halves the Khan's speed. Unfortunately, Boogeyman misses the Will-O-Wisp. This is frankly awful now, and Alexei is scrambling. Punk tags in on a resisted Crunch, but eats a massive body slam. A Citrus Berry makes sure that Hit 2 doesn't take Punk out, and he makes the Khan go to sleep. Strength Sap gets the Mushroom back to full and, crucially, drops Kang's attack. A full Para slows the Mega's demise, but a lucky full 3-turn sleep means a Giga Drain brings it to 60% before it wakes up. Geo gets off another body slam before going right back to sleep, and a Moonblast plus Giga Drain takes it out. Infernape hits the ring. Dusty face tanks a massive Pyro Ball for way more damage than expected. And now he has to dip. Knowing it's going to be a close combat, Rosa takes it. But why didn't he send in Cofagrigus? Cofagrigus is immune. Now he has to let Rosa go down for a safe switch. With a second close combat, the Fire Monkey is at -2 on both defenses. Lyra gets off a Feather Dance and brings Infernape to Sash. At -2 attack, Dustin should be able to take a hit and finish with a quick attack. But Pyro Ball gets the burn, meaning the Golden Hero also has to die for the cause. Honchkrow and Veluza both come out and get destroyed by Jericho, meaning Alexei has halted the Don, but at the cost of 2 teammates. Sunflora won't hurt too much, but the loss of a fast Fake Out Mon, that's going to sting. If this rebellion is going to be successful, Alexei has to keep pushing forward. Have a short memory from mistakes while acknowledging the sacrifices. And after a quick Ghostbusters roleplay, it's off to Saffron City, which has been taken over by Team Rocket. But at least there's eggs to be hatched. Beating down a bunch of grunts brings our hero face to face with that battle-hungry idiot, Gary. Steve the Boulder makes his debut, immediately deleting the Staraptor with a Mighty Cleave. Boogeyman makes up for the Kangaskhan fiasco by hitting the first Wisp on King Gambit, letting Tajiri come in, tank an Iron Head, almost OHKO with a flamethrower. Gary, however, decides to save the Iron Samurai, switching in his Mega Starter. But Jericho comes in to prevent the sun shining, needing a massive flamethrower for his trouble, but a single Thunder Punch is enough. Jumpluff hits the ring, immediately setting up a sword stance. But the mere presence of Big Show scares it off, and Azumarill tanks an Ice Spinner. Regal hops in and eats a liquidation, which gets a defense drop. Alexi, however, decides to risk the crit successfully and takes out the huge power mouse. Jumpluff finally faces its fear, and Big Show cleans up with an Ice Shard, followed by a stomping tantrum for King Gambit. Up another floor, and Alexi gets jumped by Archer for a second time. This time, he's accompanied by Ariana, challenging Alexi to a multi-battle. Unfortunately, Brendan sticks his nose in. He better pull his weight here. The admins lead Incineroar plus Gothitelle. Alexi sends out Regal, joined by Brendan's Masquerain. Masquerain takes out Incin as Regal scolds and burns the Goth. Primarina joins the fray as Masquerain claims another body by Bug Buzz and Gothitelle. Regal roosts off the previous turn's damage. It's real Dengo hours now. Regal eats a Shadow Ball as a Giga Drain and Flash Cannon bring the Primarina to the yellow. Jake the Snake tags in for some soft damage as Brendan's Bug keeps on trucking with another Skull Burn, this time on Prim, and then gets his fourth KO with a Bug Buzz. Finally for Ariana is Mega Marwile. But Jericho turns off its huge power, so Play Rough doesn't actually do a lot. Masquerain finally falls to Goldengo, bringing in Sceptile. Sceptile megas and hits Marwile with a hidden power, and Jericho just misses the KO with a Stomping Tantrum. So unfortunately, Sceptile goes down to a Play Rough. Jericho protects as Dengo misses a Focus Blast, and Exploud finishes off Marwile with a Surf. What the heck was Brendan thinking there? He was willing to take out Jericho. In a fit of rage, Jericho wraps it up with another Tantrum on Gold and a Mach Punch on Mega Houndoom. With the lackeys taken care of, it was time to see what Gio was up to this time. Alexi stopped him once. Surely he can do it again. Giovanni's lead this time is Hippowdon, immediately setting up the sand. Alexi leads Piper, who with the Magic Bounce ability stops the Psycho Hippo, setting up Stealth Rocks. A quick switch to Shamrock the Sork, whose Delta Stream and held air balloon means he can get rid of the sandstorm without taking any damage. And then it's back into Piper, who, in a hilarious twist, bounces back the attempted Stealth Rocks. The Rowdy One eats a couple of Earthquakes, healing off the damage with a Citrus Berry and a couple of Giga Drains. In comes Garchomp. Punk switches in as the Land Shark sets up a Sword Stance. A Rock Slide procs Punk's Berserk ability, giving it +1 special attack. Then a Spore, followed by a Strength Sap, brings Punk back to full HP and Chomp down to just +1. As Chomp snoozes, Punk takes it out with a Moonblast, staying at full. Excadrill's in next, and luckily those rocks break its Focus Sash. A quick switch to Piper on the Iron Head attempts to bait an Earthquake, but instead the mole drops a Rock Slide, popping Shamrock's air balloon. Luckily, Excadrill spins the swords as Big Ken hits it with a Low Sweep, which doesn't quite KO, but slows it down so that he can outspeed and pick up the kill with a Brick Break the next turn. Time, once again, for Mega Khan. Which means it's time for Boogeyman to redeem himself. Punch comes out, no defense drop, and Boogeyman hits the Wisp. The second crunch does get the drop, but Boogeyman is fine and gets off a body press. He can't stick around for another crunch though, thanks to the defense drop, so it's into Shamrock to finish the job. Minecraft Temple comes in. Time for Jeff the Duck to Swanton. A crit scald almost Okos, but this gives Alexi the opportunity to make a great play. Taking the KO with a flip turn, letting Big Show get in for free to face off against Geo's final mon, Torterra. A single critical hit Ice Spinner takes down the Don again. With the city freed from the tyrants, it was time to get back on the badge train. And time to challenge Sabrina. Sabrina has a nasty side spam team that's also hard trick room. This is a huge step up, especially as it's a double battle. Sabrina's team is a powerhouse squad consisting of a lead in Didi and Hatterene, which sets up the psychic terrain for powerful expanding forces from both that Hatterene and a Mega Gardevoir waiting in the back. Also hanging out back there is another strong VGC duo of Porygon 2, which with a held Eviolite is near impossible to KO with a single hit, and a Guts Flame Orb Hisui Ursaluna that can dish out massive damage with Stab Facade and Guts boosted high horsepower, plus Crunch for coverage. Her sixth and final mon is Brute Bonnet, with Protosynthesis boosted knockoff, Leaf Blade and close combat alongside the ever annoying Spore. This was going to need some serious prep. Except Alexi does just two things. Catches a Munna on Route 16, who immediately evolves into Mashana. And Mashana has two incredible abilities. Another neutralizing gas Pokemon, and Beeline Prowess. Huge power for special attacks. This adds some serious firepower to the team. He also defeats Morty in Lavender Town, the Shadow Ball TM, immediately getting taught to Ziggler. Alexi steps up with Regal and Jericho, opening with Jericho's gas to stop the side terrain going up, and also crucially stopping Hatterene's Psychic Steed activating, which then boosts the power of Jericho's knockoff, allowing a double up from Regal's Make It Rain. Who thought giving Empoleon Goldango's signature move was a good idea? Anyway, takes out the witch, preventing the first trick room and leaving Indeedee in the yellow. Out comes Boot Bonnet. Regal protects as Jericho taunts the mushroom, but instead of Spore, the shroom goes for knockoff, dealing massive damage. Expecting Bonnet to go for the kill, Alexi swaps in Big Show, whose multi-scale will allow him to tank any one hit, and then remove the now activated terrain with an Ice Spinner. Unfortunately, Brute Bonnet launches his close combat into Regal for the KO. Big Show outspeeds and gets revenge with that Ice Spinner, and Punk finishes off Indeedee with a single target Dazzling Gleam. This brings out Gardevoir and Porygon 2. P2 unfortunately traces Show's multi-scale, making it even harder to take down. With this duo out together, it's a tough choice. Who's setting up the trick room? Neither of Alexi's mons are threatening a KO, so it could be either. With 50-50 locked in, Big Show rips a weak knockoff into Gardevoir, and P2 thunderbolts the Titan as Punk puts it to sleep. Gardevoir then sets up the trick room. Big Show tags in Jordan for her debut as the Big Bear replaces Porygon 2. Another round of gas turns off Ursaluna's guts, but this also turns off Pixelate, which means Gardevoir's Hyper Voice is now a normal move, proccing Punk's Chilan Berry, which it was supposed to use to live a facade. This isn't as bad as it seems. Without guts, Ursaluna is burned and its attack is half. Facade is still going to hit hard, but without Guts, it's not as hard hitting as it could be. Alexei successfully stalls out Twisted Dimensions, letting Punk outspeed and finish off the bear as Gardevoir resets the room. Big mistake by Sabrina, as Punk is now the fastest mon on the field, taking out the Mega with a Dazzling Gleam as P2 snoozes, letting his big bro take it out with a tri-attack. An incredibly hard-fought battle, but Alexei comes out on top. However, losing his best steel type in the process. There is a certain Cosmog sitting in the PC, which can evolve into a steel type legendary at level 64 though. And this just so happens to be now. There are two potential roads to Fuchsia City and the battle with Koga. Both are weather gauntlets. Option 1, Cycling Road, which is sand into rain. Option 2, the Scenic Route, which is snow into sun. However, with Alexei's current squad having a crippling weakness to fire, there is only really one choice. The Cycling Road is currently gatekept by a biker gang, but Alexei, armed with Shamrock's Delta Stream and a now fully evolved Danhausen the Poliwrath with Intrepid Sword and access not only to Jet Punch, but also Urshifu's broken signature move, Surging Strikes. So it's not really going to be a huge problem. Okay, so it was slightly unlucky, but neither Bubba or Lyra were going to be main roster guys, so it kind of could have been worse. But as the Hall of Famer, Mr. HG keeps saying, always, always, always play around the critical hit. Something Alexei really needs to learn, and fast. The gates of Fuchsia City are guarded by a few trainers dancing in the rain, but again, Alexei has the tools to take care of these without too much trouble. Well, at least it wasn't a crit. Arriving in the town opens up a ton of encounters, which, given the bloodbath of Cycling Road, will now be absolutely essential. Well, that's not great. Okay, that is much better. To gain access to the Safari Zone, Alexei needs to have a rematch with Brendan, who has really leveled up if his lead Metagross is anything to go by. But so has Alexei, leading with the speedy Ray Phoenix to taunt the bot, stopping those stealth rocks. In a fit of rage, Metagross blows itself up, but Phoenix hangs on with the Focus Sash. Exploud hits the ring, and Alexei sends out his newly evolved Gallade, who takes it out with a single Drain Punch. Mega Sceptile is up next, but he gets scared off by Big Show. Ice Shard chips Crawdon on the switch, who then gets finished off by Punk. Gardevoir is next, but she comes face to face with Alexei's new Steel-type legendary Omega the Solgaleo, who suitably has the ability Intrepid Sword. A +1 Sunsteel Strike deletes Guardy. Medicham, however, scares the legendary Lion out. Boogeyman dodges to close combat, but misses yet another Wisp. He does, however, get some chip on Sceptile with a Shadow Ball. Thankfully, Spooky hits the second Wisp on the Leaf Dragon, who promptly gets smacked by Big Show, leaving just that Medicham, who, because it's Choice Scarfed, gets locked into close combat and cannot do a single thing to Boogeyman, who then cleans up with Shadow Balls. After a quick round of TM treasure hunting in the Safari Zone, Alexei snags himself a Zubat and prepares for Koga. Except, to gain access to the Ninja Gym, he has to rematch the first three gym leaders, Brock, Misty, and Surge, who are still pissed about being brushed aside by a kid using the region's worst of the worst. They've now upped the ante and are threatening to unleash their full power. Brock gets immediately swept by Danhausen. Misty gets bamboozled by Punk and his hidden ability Theme Engine, which maxes out his speed when hit by a water or fire move. Plus 6 speed and access to Spore and Giga Drain, it's just too much. Ferrothorn becomes a little tricky thanks to Iron Barb's Rocky Helmet and the RNG of Thunderwave, but Wisp, Hex, Boogeyman powers through. Mega Glade takes on the bridge and Jericho uses neutralizing gas to deal with the crit machine of Gakinga. Surge is a little trickier. Mega Glade, who I'm only now realizing was never nicknamed, so do me a favor, let me know in the comments who should have the honor. Takes care of the Iron Treads and Rotom Wash with a few drain punches, while all the while removing the electric terrain with his hidden Psychic Surge ability. Manectric drops Glade's attack with an Intimidate, but is completely walled by Lightning Rod Ziggler, who OHKOs with a single +1 tri-attack. Bellybolt gets the same treatment before Pawmot comes out. Surge's last 2 Pokemon are both electric fighting physical attackers, so Tajiri, with his Fairy Poison typing and Strange Steam, handily deals with them both, though Ziggler does grab his hat trick by finishing off Iron Mama. Those dream matches are incredibly tough for most trainers. The fact that Alexi brushed them aside with ease is either a sign of a top tier trainer or a very, very special squad. Potentially both, only time will tell. Looking at all the gym leaders, I'd say Koga's team is probably the toughest for this squad to deal with due to its insane speed. The only Mon he has below 110 is Drapion, and that thing's Choice Scarfed. And if that isn't enough, his Greninja has Battle Bond, not Protean, so you absolutely cannot let it get a kill. Koga leads Swellow, and Big Show starts the match for Alexi. Swellow is always going to swap out here. His only attacking move besides U-turn is Boom Burst, and Titan, being an Ice type, can probably OHKO it. He only has 2 Mons that can hit Big Show for super effective damage, in Iron Valiant and Excelgor. Alexi makes a great choice here. Since the Titan can't learn a fire move to cover the Excelgor switch, he just goes for a play rough. This catches the Valiant and deals massive damage. He unfortunately makes a very, very risky play to follow this up though. After Leftovers recovery, Big Show is 1 HP short of reactivating Multiscale, and Ice Shard is a roll to KO from here. Iron Valiant's close combat does only have a 12% chance to KO, so you are very much risking the crit by going for it. Luckily, Koga just goes for a knockoff, so even though the first Ice Shard doesn't KO, the second does. Drapion comes up next, but Ricky the Dragon completely walls the thing as he locks into Wicked Blow. It hits hard though, despite being resisted, but with Roost for recovery, he's never in any real danger. A couple of Pixelate boosted tri-attacks, both low rolling, means Ricky is in a tough spot. Alexi, for once, plays it safe, sending up Big Show to take his second finish with another Ice Shard. Excelgor hits the ring, and there's nothing it can do against Phoenix's Fire Flying typing, so it U-turns straight out into Toxtricity, who takes some decent damage from a resisted no-item Acrobatics. In goes the now fully evolved Goldberg to face down Koga's Mega. A resisted Boom Burst into Overdrive actually does a ton of damage before Big Bill takes out Tox with a single 4 times super effective Earthquake. Sensing blood in the water, Kogo sends out his real ace, Greninja, who is cursed by Danhausen. 2 strong Hydro Pumps hurt a lot, but Punchhausen deletes the frog with a single Drain Punch. A switch through Swallow as Koga get Excelgor on the field fairly safe, and Phoenix switches in on a soft Bug Buzz. Alexi makes a massive misplay here, assuming the Phoenix would live any non-crit. But with all the switching, Ray has now taken way too much chip damage, and Excelgor easily outspeeds, tossing a huge Sludge Bomb that would have KO'd even with a low roll. There wasn't much he could have done there, in all honesty. His team is so worn down, and Excelgor is out of range of even a max damage Jet Punch, meaning that a sacrifice would have been needed even if he'd slowed down and calc it out. In reality, that sack should probably have been Goldberg, and not his only fire type. But here we are. He likes to play fast and loose, and those are the consequences. Tajiri comes out to avenge his buddy. Koga switches Swallow into a Strange Steam, which gets a one-hit KO, and Excelgor meets the same fate, earning the squad the 6th gym badge. On to Cinnabar Island and Blaine. To earn his way into the gym, Alexi first has to collect a key from the Pokemon Mansion, but barring his way is May, a trainer from Hoenn. She's also running the new Kanto Gauntlet and doing pretty well, it seems. The team is a little strange though, and Alexi has some phenomenal counters. Starting with Piper, who prevents Solrock from setting up its rocks with the Magic Bounce ability, and baiting a Psychic type move, which Ricky the Dragon is immune to. Strangely though, Solrock just goes boom. That is a little unfortunate, since Ricky takes a lot of damage and now can't be a backup for other mons. But his job is done, so I guess we take those. May won't send in her Mega, since Flygon also has a super effective move. Earthquake does decent damage to Big Show on the tag, but a single priority Ice Shard is enough to take out Fake Chomp. Now it's Mega Blaziken. It hits stupidly hard and has speed boost, which makes it incredibly tricky for a lot of teams to play around. But Alexi has a Danhausen. Even though a crit close combat would probably have KO'd on the switch, thanks to the defense drop, a +1 Jet Punch is enough to take out this beast. The crit really didn't matter, but it's good to see that Danhausen is taking his job seriously for once. Breloom jumps the ropes. This is Piper's real job. Prove he is the one true Mushroom King. And that he does by using Breloom's Poison Heal ability against her. Venoshock does double damage against poison foes, meaning it's now a 130 base power super effective move that sends the Pretender packing. Manectric though is where this battle gets a little dicey. Ziggler with Lightning Rod is the obvious counter. That means Manectric is stuck using Overheat, which will quickly get its special attack to -6. But while a crit Overheat isn't likely to get a KO from full, after the switch, Alexi is always risking one, since a Silk Scarf boosted Tri-Attack only has a 40% chance to take Manectric out. A couple of recovers bring Ziggler almost back to full, and Tri-Attack barely misses the KO. Now he's at the mercy of crit, which thankfully doesn't land, so bye-bye Spark Dog, hello Dino Fish. But this is the safest matchup of the fight. Punk jumps in to take a Banded Waterfall, getting a speed boost thanks to Steam Engine, and finishes the match with a Giga Drain. May is defeated. A quick zip through the mansion to get the key, and it's time for gym number 7. This gym is insane. The entire place has permanent sun, even for the trainer battles. but the uprising just rolls straight through them, and in a few minutes, the army is standing face to face with Blaine and his Mega Charizard Y. Blaine's team is brutal. A slight misstep and it will beat you like a scolded dog. At least the shinies are cool though. Blaine's lead is a Focus Sash Armarouge with Aura Sphere and Energy Ball for coverage into the typical Dark and Water counters. Alexi sends out Osprey, who thanks to Primordial Sea, completely nullifies the fire moves. The plan was to use a loaded dice Rock Blast to ignore the Sash, but Armarouge has surprisingly decent physical defense, so that is not going to be enough. A knockoff into a Rock Blast is enough though to deal with the Mega Man. Bringing in Typhlosion. With Fire Move nullified and Osprey in the red, this could be absolutely anything, but Danhausen will survive any one hit. It is unfortunately a HP Grass, but even 2 isn't going to be enough to trouble the very nice, very evil Tadpole, who takes it down with 2 Jet Punches. Time for Slitherwing. Sierra would be so proud. And for the prehistoric bug, we have a dead man. Taker makes his big entrance, being immune to the close combat, then outspeeding, and thanks to Protean, a single quad effective acrobatics, even with a held item, is enough to send the bug back to the Carboniferous. Ogerpon takes the mat and makes a huge mistake using knockoff to remove Taker's Citrus Berry, powering up another acrobatics, which takes out the Masked Menace in a single hit. Huge debut performance from the angriest of monkeys. This really angers Blaine though, and out comes his ace, Mega Charizard Y. Alexi makes a massive mistake here, sending out Goldberg. Big Bill has his hidden ability Snow Warning, but because the switch happens before Megaing, Snow gets set up before the sun, meaning Zard is at full power. The flamethrower doesn't do a huge amount, thankfully, and Blaine gets scared off, switching in Exeggutor to eat that rock slide. Anticipating the Giga Drain, Alexi switches in Omega, but Blaine calls it and instead goes for a growth. At +2, thanks to the sun boosting growth and with Chlorophyll active, this Exeggutor is going to absolutely wreck shop. Alexi has to get rid of the sun again. Unfortunately, the only way to achieve this is to sacrifice Osprey. An Ice-type Weather Ball at +2 has a chance to KO Goldberg, so it has to be Osprey that takes the pin. With the sun down and a free switch, Ricky can come out and a single Dark Pulse is enough to get revenge for his fallen brother. Zard returns, and though 2 Dragon Pulses bring Goldberg to the brink, he clutches up and drops the rocks on the false dragon for the win. Before Alexi gets to face the 8th and final gym leader, there's some unfinished business with Team Rocket and stopping Don Geo once and for all. How the hell a Pokemon trainer from Sinnoh ended up being pegged as the only person who could stop this madness, we shall never know. But needs must, off to Cerulean Cave we go. First order of business, making it to Giovanni. With Brendan stalling the admins, Alexi fights his way through the grunts. Unfortunately, Archer and Ariana are too much for him, and at the last moment they catch up. Looks like if you want something done properly, you have to do it yourself. This is an incredibly difficult back-to-back battle with no healing between. Archer first. He leads with Mamoswine and Danhausen steps up for Alexi. Drain Punch into Jet Punch means our favourite Tadpole is at full health when the Mammoth falls. Durant crawls in and immediately sets up with a Hone Claws. The Dead Ape can't deal with that thing, so Omega steps in and takes a massive Iron Head. But this is all a setup to get Rosemary in on an X-Scissor to haze away that boost. A U-turn out lets Taker get back in safely, and a Fire Punch finally takes care of the ant. Mimikyu steps in and rips a crit Shadow Claw that leaves Taker in the red before the dead ape breaks her disguise with a Shadow Punch and tags Rosemary back in. Another crit! Luckily, it's on a weak Shadow Sneak before a Poison Fang actually gets the poison on Ghosty Chew. I swear, Fur Coat is absolutely busted. U-turn finishes off Mimi and Danhausen comes back to face the Devil Dog. 2 jet punches and Archer is done. Now for Ariana. Danhausen is faster than Hatterene, so Flip turns out for massive damage, sending in Boogeyman. Hat leaves and Honchkrow eats a Shadow Ball. Tajiri jumps in for a resisted Night Slash and sets up Toxic Spikes. A crit Drill Prac does huge damage before a Wisp into a Strange Steam finishes off Don Burbo. Mega Marwile is no match for Omega and falls to a single Heat Crash. Rhyperia gets poisoned and Alexi has to pivot around between Rosemary and Boogeyman before getting Danhausen in to take the KO with another Flip turn. Boogeyman, now pretty damn low, heads out to face Hatterene. An attempt at a Pain Split unfortunately goes horribly wrong as Hatterene just heals with a Citrus Berry and KOs the Freaky Bud with a Dazzling Gleam. Rosemary returns, takes the KO with a Poison Fang, but a needless death at the end of an actually well played 2 battles. Alexi takes a deep breath, heals his Pokemon and presses on, finally reaching the bottom floor of the cave where Giovanni is catching Mewtwo. I have to wonder here what he's thinking, because Mewtwo has been power crept to high heaven over the last few years. There are way stronger mons he could be using that Master Ball on. But I guess not all Kanto trainers are keeping up with the meta. You do you, big man. Just as Alexi is about to throw down, Lance, leader of the Elite Four, sticks his nose in and decides he wants to battle and asks Alexi for help. Like, dude, he doesn't need you. If you just step back and allow the kid to handle this battle would be a lot easier. But you have to play the hand you're dealt. A good synergistic-ish 6 mons from Giovanni versus Lance with 3 dragons and Alexi's ragtag bunch of rebels. What could go wrong? Alexi sends in Jericho alongside Lance's Dragapult, facing down Giovanni's Tapu Lele and Scrafty. Once again, that neutralizing gas ability coming in clutch. No Intimidate, no Psychic Terrain. A full Power Spirit Shackle deletes the pink egg, and Plasma Fist gets redirected into Scrafty for over 50%. Unfortunately, Scrafty knocks off Jericho's Sugar Berry instead of going for the super effective move into Dragapult, dealing close to 60% in the process. Mewtwo hits the field. Jericho protects, blocking the Soul Robbery as Pult comes incredibly close to the one-shot on the supposed legend. But knockoff brings Jetragon to the brink. Jericho tags in Omega. Pult KOs Mewtwo, but now we see the power of this guy, as instead of returning to its Pokeball, it bloody Mega Evolves and still gets to move, ripping an expanding force that thankfully isn't boosted by Psychic Terrain. It's still enough to KO Pult and crits Omega, who also takes a Drain Punch. Omega protects, scouting what Lance is thinking before he moves, blocking Mewtwo's Flamethrower as Dialga almost gets the knockout on Scrafty with a Dragon Pulse. Soul Robbery does pitiful damage to Dialga. That's the Mewtwo we're used to. And Omega just misses the KO with an Intrepid Sword boosted Crunch, as Body Press finally takes out Scrafty. Giovanni, though, brings out his real ace, Celesteela. This thing is incredibly bulky, and its Steel plus Flying typing makes it really tough to hit for solid damage. Mewtwo's final act is to flamethrower Omega, who is smartly holding an Ockerberry, but it still does stupid damage. Thankfully, Omega puts it out of its misery as Dialga body presses Celesteela. Now, Steela moves. If this is a flamethrower into Omega, he's a goner. Okay, it's a Meteor Beam. Better, but could still KO with a crit. Oh, phew. It's into Dialga. Omega lives on. Giovanni still has T-Tar Excadrill waiting in the wings, both of which threaten Omega with huge damage. T-Tar comes first, prepping the sand for his moly buddy. Omega protects buying time, but a 4x super effective body press leaves T-Tar in the red. But it whiffs a high horsepower into the protect as Celesteela's +1 critical hit flamethrower barely scratches the Lord of Time. Omega pivots into the other half of Team Intrepid, Danhausen. Dialga cleans up T-Tar, and Steela leaves Dialga in the red with an air slash. Alexi is in a bit of a pickle here, as a double up into Danhausen will KO. There's no way for Alexi to take out Celesteela before it moves, and Excadrill outspeeds Danhausen and is holding a focus sash. So the only way for Danhausen to take it out is with the Surgeon Strikes. But if Lance targets it with a body press, that's a waste, since a Jet Punch plus body press combo should remove them all. So Alexi smartly protects, scouting Lance's intention. If it's a body press, then Jet Punch picks up the KO next turn. It's a flamethrower, which still procs the sash and gets the burn. Lance has actually clutched this fight. Excadrill takes out Dialga, but we will be singing his praises. Until that is, Alexi gets destroyed by him in the Elite Four. Burn Chip takes it out, leaving Giovanni with just his albeit very threatening Celesteela. Lance sends in his ace, Mega Salamence, who unfortunately doesn't have Aerialate in this battle. But it doesn't matter, as Flamethrower into Aquatail sends the beast back to the Ultra Dimension, winning the battle and ending Giovanni's diabolical plot in the process. Who'd have thought that the head of Kanto's Elite Four would have actually been useful here? On to the final gym battle, who surprisingly is Claire, Johto's dragon leader. This won't be easy. Claire leads Aerodactyl, and Alexi sends out the still unnamed Gallade, who Mega Evolves and bounces back the Stealth Rocks before taking it out with a Cycle Cut into Drain Punch. Bouncing back the rocks is a smart play because not only does Claire like to switch around, but her Dragonite has multi-scale, which will get broken on its way in. Her ace, Naganadel, comes straight out. And while Gallade can take it out with a single Cycle Cut, this beast is faster and can get the KO with a Draco Meteor. So, in comes Punk, who's immune to Draco and baits a Sludge Wave, which Omega is conveniently immune to, who baits a Flamethrower, which will do minimal damage to Alexi's actual Naganadel counter, Jordan Grace. Unfortunately, Alexi didn't anticipate the switch, so he sets Trick Room as Magearna comes in. Luckily, Fleur Cannon does very little to Omega, who eats it for breakfast. Claire sends in Roaring Moon, who is slower than Omega thanks to Trick Room, and gets sent to the Shadow Realm by a superpower. This unfortunately drops Omega's defense, so he can't stay in versus Gouging Fire. But Ricky the Triple Dragon takes a Flare Blitz with ease and baits a Dragon Claw, letting Punk once again get in for free, getting off at Spore. Naganadel returns as Punk strength saps back to full HP. So it's over to Omega on a Sludge Wave and Jordan on a Flamethrower, which unfortunately brings Jordan way too low to stay in on Draco Meteor. So now Alexi has to do a little dance. pivoting around to let Ricky eat a -2 flamethrower, which deals Life Orb Chip to Naganadel, eventually KOing itself, and leaving Ricky in on Dragonite, where she can boost off the damage and take the KO with a Fickle Beam, leaving just the Sleeping Gouging Fire, which, thanks to Stealth Rob Chip and some luck with sleep turns, Punk deals with using 2 sparkly swirls. That battle showed some great adaptation and quick thinking by Alexi. He really has grown as a trainer throughout this journey. Identifying Life Orb recoil as a win condition and having the patience to execute that strategy was not something he could have done just a few gyms ago. This journey has not only improved his Pokemon, the soldiers of the Great Rebellion, but also their general, their leader. He truly has embraced this role, one he wasn't looking for and probably didn't want when he first arrived in Kanto. Yes, this was meant to be a test of his skills, of all he had learnt back home, but it was not meant to be as a guide to the unwanted and underappreciated. He was not meant to be strategizing to this degree, finding ways for Shinotics to take down monsters of the world's prehistoric past. But as he strolls through Victory Road, after a rude interruption by Gary on Route 22, which does result in the untimely death of Rowdy Amoongus Piper at the hands of Azumarill, he finds himself quietly confident about the team's success, but also satisfied with their achievements. And no matter what trials and tribulations the Indigo Plateau holds, each and every one of them can be proud of what they've accomplished. Each member of this new and improved Kanto Elite Four has 2 teams, each with subtle differences that make planning for it very, very challenging. Luckily, somebody in the lobby let slip that Lorelei will be using her snow team, so we do have a slight edge there, but the other 3 Alexi has to face down blind. There are a few key things that your team needs to be able to deal with in this Elite Four. For Lorelei, in this instance, it's Calyrex Ice Rider. In the snow, this thing is incredibly bulky, and with Glacial Lance has one of the most broken spread moves in the game. It's not as oppressive as some of the others, but you have to respect it in your team building. Bruno has 2, Zacian and Mega Lucario. Lucario isn't too bad, but the issue is that you don't know if it's going to be special or physical, so you have to be able to check both. The main issue on his team is Zacian. It's ridiculously fast, and if it gets up a sword stance, you are in trouble. Luckily, it doesn't have a fairy move, and it has the same set no matter which team you're facing. Agatha isn't too difficult. Her main issue is Mega Gengar and its Shadow Tag ability, but because you can switch before it megas and traps you in, it's actually pretty simple to deal with. It just hits really hard. Lance's team is full of threats. Iron Jugulus hits ridiculously hard. Melmetal deals way more damage than you expect, and Mega Salamence is, well, Mega frickin' Salamence. The insanity, though, is Primal Dialga. Its Primal Armor ability reduces super effective hits by 50%. Its signature move, Roar of Time, does huge Dragon-type damage and forces the mon it hits out into a random Pokemon. Oh, and it has Stab Flash Cannon to hit Fairy types that are immune to that. Oh wait, and there's more. It has Rest and Sleep Talk. Any team you build has to start with a way to break this monster. So here is the Team Alexi brought to the Kanto Survivor Series. Let's start with the obvious picks. Omega, the Solgaleo with Intrepid Sword. Yeah, you'd be pretty dumb not to bring this thing. Danhausen, the Poliwrath, the other Intrepid Bro. +1 Jet Punch, Surging Strikes, Close Combat, Drain Punch. Yeah, it's kind of busted. Gallade, still not nicknamed, with access to Psychic Terrain to boost Psycho Cut and block priority, plus Grassy Terrain from Seed Sower for recovery. It's great. And then it can Mega Evolve to boost its attack and speed. Ziggler, the Porygon Z. Lightning Rod is just a phenomenal ability. Combined with his natural ghost immunity, it's a great Pokemon and has very good coverage. Tajiri, the Galarian Weezing. Alexi's fairy type of choice. Has a good typing, plus 2 good abilities in Sage Power and Toxic Debris. Sage Power is good for that little extra oomph when you need it, and Toxic Debris, setting up Toxic Spikes, it's great for getting that little bit of extra chip to bring things into range of a KO. So it's even nice for the rest of the team. And the final Mon captured. Hatched from an egg in its middle stage on the steps of the Indigo League. Seidel the Vikavolt. This Pokemon is absurdly broken. It has Hadron Engine, Miraidon's signature ability. That not only sets electric terrain, but essentially gives it an unconditional Life Orb boost while the terrain is active. It also has access to Raging Bolt's signature move, Thunderclap. So, a special attacking Sucker Punch coming off base 145 special attack that's boosted by 50% thanks to the terrain, and an additional 33% on top of that thanks to Hadron Engine. That's a 140 base power priority move. The damage that this thing can put out is utterly insane. However, let's not forget it's very, very slow and not exactly the bulkiest Mon in the world. The priority will obviously help, but there are Mons that won't get KO'd in a single hit and will utterly obliterate the Jet Bug. So, while it's strong, it still has to be positioned correctly. And we've already seen Alexi really isn't great at that. It's time. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Lorelei is actually handled pretty well by Omega. Just Omega. With a Choice Scarf, it outspeeds her lead, and Sunsteel Strike is a roll to take out Glaceon before it can get off a move. His partner, Gallade, follows up with a Brick Break, which was targeted into the Glaceon, breaking the Aurora Veil set up by a 9. Rotom comes out. Omega picks up KO number 2, and Ziggler switches in, getting a +1 by absorbing the Thunderbolt. Now is Lorelei's horse. But Ziggler and Omega outspeed both, deleting the biggest threat with a Sunsteel and Dark Pulse combination. Ziggler takes a Scold for about 40% and gets burnt. This does matter, mostly for the chip damage though. Baxcalibur is pretty tough to deal with. It will normally protect on the first turn, but in this situation, Lorelei sees that it doesn't die to a single hit and can KO Ziggler with a Glaive Rush. Alexi is, as always, risking the crit from Scald. The crit doesn't come out, and even with the burn, Ziggler doesn't go down. Abomasnow hits the ring, but this is the last turn of Snow, so it Mega Evolves and only gets to use a single turn of Slush Rush. to hit a really weak hidden power fire before going down to 2 Sunsteel strikes. Ziggler protects and then recovers back to 70%. Before Alexei finally puts the washing machine out of its misery. 1 down, 3 to go. Sparring time with the fighting master Bruno. We cannot tell what his team is until we see the lead. If the lead is Great Tusk, then it's Urshifu Water, Calm Mind Iron Valiant, and Special Lucario. That's probably the easier of the two for this squad to deal with. If the lead is Infernape, then it's Urshifu Dark, 4 Attack Iron Valiant, and Physical Lucario. It's the Ape. Glade starts the match. Psychic Surge deters the priority from Urshifu and Lucario, if Alexei can bait them out while it's active. Mega Evolving bounces back to Stealth Rocks before Zen Headbutt into Drain Punch takes out the Ape. Of course, risking the crit from Pyro Ball, that thankfully never comes. Bruno sends out Zacian. Omega switches in to eat a close combat, which does over half. Luckily, a Choice Scarf +1 Earthquake into a -1 defense Zacian is complete overkill. Dark Bear smells blood and comes up flying with 2 massive wicked blows into Tajiri, but a single Sage Power boosted Strange Steam sends the bear back into hibernation. Mega Lucario rips a huge Meteor Mash into Danhausen on the switch, and now a close combat can kill, so a pivot into Seidel for his debut, and that Thunderclap into -1 special defense is enough to get our guys out of what could have been a very sticky situation. From here, Como gets slapped by Omega, and Valiant gives Ziggler a +1 special attack boost before removing it with Moonblast secondary effect, forcing the pivot after Psychic doesn't KO. So, switch to Tajiri. You get Seidel out for another Thunderclap pickoff. Agatha is trickier than she looks. She leads with a Zoroark, but you don't know which one, so you can't fake out to break the sash. Not that Alexei has a fake out mon anyway, but still. Alexei smartly leads Ziggler, who is immune to the Hisui Zoroark's ghost moves and has coverage to hit both. Hyper Voice comes out, so we know this is the Hisui version, and the team is going to have Roaring Moon and Chi-Yu. Dark Pulse was a smart move choice, since it'll break the sash on the Dark version, but hit the Ghost version really hard. Zoroark dealt with. Out comes Roaring Moon. Seidel hits the ring, but thanks to Agatha going for Iron Head, survives on 1 HP to take out the Dino Menace with a Bug Buzz. This is a tough spot, since it could be any move from Golden Go, and Make It Rain will hit everything way too hard. Focus Blast can miss, but if it lands, will destroy a lot of Alexei's team. He is not going to get out of this without making a very hard call and risking losing a mon. Ziggler is immune to Shadow Ball, so can bait the Focus Blast or Make It Rain, allowing for a free switch if the worst happens, or a safer switch if it's Shadow Ball. He gets away with it. Agatha doesn't want to drop special attack with Make It Rain or risk the miss with Focus Blast. Pivot out to Glade, who takes the Make It Rain, back to Ziggler on the baited Shadow Ball, and Danhausen on the Make It Rain again. Back to Ziggler on what would have been a Shadow Ball, but the Make It Rain drops force the switch since Golden Go can't do more than 20% to Danhausen. Marshadow comes out, and this is great for our boy. This has to be a Drain Punch or a Bulk Up, since it only has Fighting or Ghost moves. It shouldn't really be a Bulk Up, since Agatha can KO, so it's off to Tajiri, who quad resists the Fighting move, and isn't KO'd by the ghost once. A strange steam drops Marshadow to Sash, but Agatha decides to save it and send Dengo back in. Strange steam pops the air balloon, and the baited Make It Rain lets Alexei send in Choice Scarf Omega, who can lock into Earthquake and sweep. He got incredibly lucky with the initial Ziggler switch, but again, the patience to get into position to force Agatha into a mistake was very well done. It's finally come down to Lance, the person Alexei stood side by side with to face down Giovanni and Mega Mewtwo Y. There's a level of respect here on both sides that will make this a battle for the ages. Is this 6 enough to take down Primal Dialga and Mega Salamence? Has Alexei grown enough as a trainer through this journey to make the hard plays required to win this battle? There's only one way to find out. Lance leads Aerodactyl, which means it's weakness policy Dragonite and specially defensive Dialga. As always, its designated lead Mega Gallade to bounce back the rocks. This is specifically to break the multi-scale on Dragonite. Ice Punch brings the burb to Sash, and Lance tries to save it. But it'll die to rocks when it comes back in, so Alexei doesn't really have to worry about it. Jugular comes out, and between rocks and Ice Punch, it's left on 1 HP. Seidel eats a non-crit Aeroblast and then finishes it off with Thunderclap. That electric terrain is going to be absolutely key to Alexei's strategy in this match, and is one of the reasons, besides that insane special damage output, that Seidel is on the squad. The electric terrain prevents Dialga from using Rest, so it cannot recover. And sure enough, here is the utter monster. Now we get to the strategy. First is Tajiri on the Roar of Time. Then into Omega on the Flash Cannon. Omega resists both of Dialga's moves, and a Choice Band Earthquake does around 45%. So Roar of Time sends Omega out to Danhausen, switch to Tajiri on the next Roar of Time as the terrain disappears. So it's into Seidel, who resists the Flash Cannon and prevents the rest. Finally, it's back to Omega to take the KO with another Earthquake. Melmetal is taken care of by Danhausen with a couple of Drain Punches. But now it's Salamence. This was always going to be the hardest part of this fight. Things are about to get very, very risky. First, into Omega on a double edge to try and get Mens to go for something other than double edge, because Ziggler can easily live anything other than that. So it's in to Ziggler, and it's a double edge. This will kill with the crit, but without the crit it only has 25% chance to KO. And Ziggler clutches up, living on 8 HP. With a Choice Scarf, he can outspeed and destroy Jet Dragon with a single Ice Beam. Dragonite is up, and unfortunately has extreme speed, so even though Ziggler can KO it, it will die before he gets a move off. Back to Gallade on the E-Speed, and KO with an Ice Punch. Finally, out comes Aerodactyl, who dies to Stealth Rocks. Alexei has done it. He has shown the world that these forgotten, discarded, ignored Pokemon can beat the Elite Four. But there's still one more battle between him and the Hall of Fame. Gary actually made it through before them. He's taken the completely opposite approach to Alexi though. His team is comprised of the strongest Pokemon, the best of the best. Gary leads with Pheromosa, a crazy fast, hard-hitting glass cannon. Tajiri only gets hit decently hard by Triple Axle, which luckily only hits once before it gets brought down to Sash and U-turns out. This U-turn is baited by those toxic spikes. Eternatus comes out to absorb the spikes and take some good chip from Strange Steam, and luckily gets confused. This baits Sludge Wave, which Omega is immune to, so gets in for free. The following turn, Eternatus hits itself in confusion and gets utterly boomed by Choice Band Earthquake. Yveltal can OHKO Omega with a Dark Hole, which Danhausen resists, and baits a fairly weak Oblivion Wing. The annoying thing here is that Yveltal is faster and has access to Sucker Punch, which will cause Thunderclap to fail. But if it's going for Sucker Punch, it's not really hitting very hard, and Rising Voltage absolutely destroys it, but doesn't quite kill. To be safe, Alexi switches into Danhausen on a Sucker Punch, who can then finish the Dark Bird with a Jack Punch, and bait in Miraidon. Hoping for a Parabolic Charge, Alexi swaps into Ziggler, who unfortunately gets slammed by a Dragon Pulse, before outspeeding thanks to a Choice Scarf and ripping an Ice Beam that unfortunately only does around half, before Ziggler has to take one for the team, letting Omega come back in to pick up another KO with Earthquake. Pheromosa hits the field, but U-turns out to get in Metagross, so Alexi has to sacrifice Danhausen to get Omega back in for another EQ. Gary is now left with just Pheromosa and Ditto. And here comes the fun tech. Pheromosa is going to U-turn again, so switching in Gallade makes Ditto come in, get poisoned on the switch, and transform into base form Gallade. 2 Zen Headbutts aren't quite enough, and then Omega takes it out with a single Zen Headbutt of its own, bringing out Pheromosa, who dies to a single kick of poison. Alexi has done it. He has taken a misfit band of Mons to the Kanto Hall of Fame. Thank you so much for watching. Even one person watching this far honestly means the world to me. I know this isn't what some people consider a true trash lock, since I didn't ban legendaries, I didn't have a BST cap, but others do consider this a trash lock, and I thought it was the most fun way to use the built-in Rad Red randomizer, while not just grabbing a bunch of OP legendaries and strolling through the game. I'm not a serious Nuzlocker, as you probably gathered from watching that run. So this was the right balance of fun, challenging, and making a video interesting. Speaking of which, this really was the hardest video I've made so far. Between a failed run at Lance, life getting in the way, ADHD brain getting in the way, this has probably been over a year in the making. The idea, the script, just the creative side of it just didn't want to come together. But I'm really proud of how we eventually turned out. It's not perfect, but for a first crack at one of these, it's definitely not bad in my eyes. Anyway, I guess what I'm saying is I had a ton of fun with this. There will be more, and I've got the next couple of runs I want to do already lined up. But if you do have any ideas, let me know in the comments. And as always, do the YouTube things, and I'll see you in the next one.